of sin, not to hide it, to pretend it did not exist, or that somehow it is relative because his love is eternal. God loves eternally, but in his own terms. He loves us from the cross, from the tree we used to hide. No more hiding. The tree is planted by the streams of water, within the center of the universe. You cannot hide now, but only behold it. So Christ, in his own terms, can take you up from hell to heaven, from death to life. You descended to Hades, my Savior, and shattered its gates as the Almighty. As Creator, you raised the dead with yourself and smashed the sting of death, O Christ. You freed Adam from the curse, O lover of humanity. Therefore, we all cry out to you, save us, O Lord. Resurrectional Kontakion. Excerpts taken from this past Sunday's bulletin at St. John the Compassionate Mission.
Thank you for listening to our Parables of Community, Asceticism of the Open Door. These parables are the precious pearls that God bestows on the church when it risks opening its door to the stranger. We hope that they will inspire you to discover the presence of the kingdom in your own parishes and life. This has been a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.
Proclaiming Christ, victor over sin and death. You're listening to Ancient Faith Radio, your Orthodox Internet radio connection.
This is Everyday Orthodox with Elissa, a live listener call-in show where we share the stories of everyday Orthodox people as we get to know the members of the body of Christ. Join the conversation. We invite you to call in with questions at 1-855-AF-RADIO, 1-855-237-2346.
Welcome to Everyday Orthodox. It is July 18th, 2021, and we are live on Ancient Faith Radio. We're also live on Facebook Live and on YouTube. If you go to the Ancient Faith Radio page on Facebook, that's facebook.com/Ancient Faith Radio, or the Ancient Faith Radio YouTube page, you'll actually see a live stream of this. There's no video really, it's just audio, of course, but you can listen there too, so it's kind of neat. But anyway, I'm Elissa, and we get together every Sunday night to meet Orthodox people, everyday people, anyone. You know, I always like to say, you know, the movers and the shakers, the prosphora bakers, you know, the Sunday school teachers, and the guy who just stands in back quietly, you never talk to him, and just anybody in the church. And tonight, I think you're really going to enjoy our guest tonight. Her name is Presbytera Caroline Pavlakos. And now, she grew up in Brooklyn, New York, but now she and her husband are at a parish in Newport Richey, Florida. So I'm sure there are a lot of differences between living on the beach in Florida and growing up in Brooklyn. And we're going to hear all about that and all about her story of how she ended up here as a young new mom, a teacher, and of course a presbytera there in Florida. So Caroline, welcome to the program.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me tonight, Elissa. It's so exciting to be here.
Oh, it is exciting to have you here. And, you know, also I want to tell our listeners that you're welcome to call in with questions or to join the conversation if you like. You're welcome to call us at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Matushka Trudy Richter is right here to take your call and to put you live on the air. So give us a call. Anyway, so Presbytera, I would love to hear your whole story. I know it starts in Brooklyn. Were you actually born in Brooklyn?
So funny thing is, I was actually born in New Jersey, believe it or not. I was actually born in New Jersey. So my story begins in New Jersey. My parents, when they got married, they bought the house in Brooklyn, and they had to go to New Jersey because that's where my mom's doctor was, and she got admitted to the hospital with me and couldn't leave for a week. So I was, and she was suffering pretty bad preeclampsia and hypertension, so they couldn't let her leave. And I was born in New Jersey.
There you go. Sometimes that happens.
Yep. So I'm a Jersey. So I like to say I'm a hidden roots Jersey girl. But then we drove over Then we drove over the Verrazano Bridge to Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, where I have grown up. My parents still have the house I grew up in, and I loved growing up in Brooklyn. I loved growing up in the city, sitting on the stoop, because, many of us didn't have backyards. So you're sitting on the stoop, eating ice cream, playing in the street, walking, riding your bikes up and down the street, shopping on the avenue. We walked everywhere. It was a great childhood experience that I will never, ever, ever forget.
Oh, that is amazing. That's really beautiful. I love Brooklyn. It just has such a nice energy to it. And it's what a great way to grow up.
It really does. It really does. And there's so many different parts of Brooklyn that have really, truly evolved. I think everyone has their own take on what Brooklyn really is. And for me, it was growing up in the neighborhood of Bay Ridge. We lived 4 blocks away from the church we went to. We went to Holy Cross Greek Orthodox Church in Brooklyn, although Brooklyn has so many other Orthodox churches, both Greek and other jurisdictions. And we have many friends and family throughout the parishes. And just growing up in Brooklyn was just wonderful. We went to school there. We just did camp there, all our activities growing up in Brooklyn. And the best part about now growing up is I get to take my son there and see where I grew up. And we just got back a week ago from spending about 10 days up in Brooklyn, and it was awesome. It was great.
Oh, that's fantastic. And that's so great that your parents still have the house there now that you have your son, and you can show him everything, and it's lovely. And as he gets older, introduce him to all the people and have him play in the street. That's very cool. I love that. Love that. So you grew up in the Greek church, and you had family in Greek churches. Does that mean you grew up in a Greek family? And what was the family like?
I did. I grew up in a Greek family. So my dad was born in Greece and came to the United States when he was about, I think, 6 years old. And then my mom grew up in America. She grew up in Brooklyn. She's a Brooklyn girl. When my dad came to the United States, they lived on top of a storefront in Brooklyn, and then they bought a 3-family house where they've lived.
Whoops, I think we've dropped you, Presbytera. Uh-oh, where are you? I want to hear about the 3-family house in Brooklyn. I'm sure she'll be right back to tell us about it. But there you are. There you are.
I'm here. I'm so sorry.
Oh, excellent. No, that's just fine. That's just fine. We were just talking about your parents had just bought the 3-family house there in Brooklyn.
Yeah, so,
and is that the house they're still in now?
So that was my grandparents with my dad. They bought a 3-family house. Yeah, and then so they all lived in one house together. And then my mom and her family, they lived in the house with their grandparents, and my papu, who's still living, he's 92 and still kicking it. He's doing great. And that was his house when he was younger. And that house has been through, like, I think 3 generations of people, like going on 90 plus years of people living in that house. And that it's really wonderful that, my mom gets to have us, still get to go back. And she shows us where, like, she played, and this is where I slept, and this is where Papu used to sit in his chair and read his newspaper, and Yaya would be in the kitchen cooking, and the dog would be sleeping at her feet. It's just really wonderful memories. And but yeah, so my parents bought the house that we lived in, and they still have it, and I love visiting. And it's just, I don't know what else to say other than every time I go back, the memories just come flooding.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And that's something that really is being lost in the United States, right? In other countries, people live in the same place for generations, and your great-great-great-great-grandfather built the house and all of that. And we just we used to have that here, but we're seeing it less and less. So it's so lovely that your family has that, but you're not there. You're not in Brooklyn. How do you feel? Was that like a real struggle when you married a priest that you knew that you were going to, like, what does that mean?
So basically so my husband's father, Andrew, and when we were dating and talking about, we were getting serious and thinking about getting engaged, and he came from a clergy family too. So he actually lived in 6 different states. And so he moved around a lot as a child, but I had never lived anywhere else other than New York. And I mean, I studied abroad in college in Rome, which was awesome in my junior year, but I went to college like 25 minutes away from my house, but I've never lived anywhere else. And I knew that it was going to be something that I really had to kind of come to terms with like, okay, there's life outside of New York. I mean, there is yes, there is life outside of Brooklyn, New York. It's beyond the stoop, everyone, beyond the stoop. And yeah, I think we were joking with friends. If I were to start a blog or a TV show or something, it would be called Beyond the Stoop.
I love that.
Yeah, Beyond the Stoop. And so when we were talking about getting engaged and married, I had to really, really think about, am I okay with living somewhere else? And just thinking about, okay, where can we live? We knew we wanted to stay on the East Coast. We knew we wanted to live somewhere between New York and Virginia, because Virginia was where my husband last lived, and in Northern Virginia, right by DC. And I think everything, I mean, it was all by the Holy Spirit. Everything just fell into place. We lived in his first assignment was as the youth director in Richmond, Virginia. So we were in Richmond. Yep. So we were in the South. Yep. And it was great. I really got to embrace my Southern roots because my yaya is from Texas. She's from Dallas. Nice. And we're so close with her family down there. In Dallas, we keep in touch with them. And I grew to really love the city of Richmond. I loved, everyone was so nice. I mean, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, y'all. Everyone was so nice. And I really loved it. And then when we got the call, and then when Father Andrew got the call, the opportunity to live in Florida and be ordained, we prayed about it. We jumped at the opportunity, and we love living in Florida. We love living by the beach. We love the slower pace of life. And we love how we love being outside. And we've really grown to have roots down here. And now that we have our son, I mean, we're raising a little beach baby, and I love it.
Awesome.
We're raising a little beach baby. Even though I grew up a city girl, I will always be a city girl, but I have always really enjoyed spending time at the beach. And every time we took a beach vacation, I mean, we vacationed down at the Jersey Shore almost every year. And then when we went to Mexico for the first time, and then Florida, I mean, and Greece, and everywhere where there was a beach, I would get really, really sad when we left. Yep.
You're a beach girl at heart. There you go.
I am.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, and also I kind of think, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like in Florida, the culture, there are actually so many Northeastern transplants, at least during the wintertime, right? When so many people come down to Florida and then go back up to New York, New Jersey, and everybody up there. You must actually find quite a few people like from home, essentially, right?
It's so funny. I mean, I could be in the grocery store and hear someone talking, and by the accent, I can tell, oh my gosh, they are from New York. They're from New Jersey. And sometimes, if we're waiting online, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Oh, where about? Oh, I'm from, this neighborhood. I said, oh, I'm from Bay Ridge. And then we get talking. And actually, the first year I lived down here, I was at the dollar store and I was shopping for my classroom. It was my first year as a teacher down here. It was about 5 years ago. Wow, I lived in Florida for 5 years. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. She saw my cart piled high with stuff, and she said, excuse me, you've got a lot of stuff. I said, yeah, I do. It's really funny. I'm a teacher. And she said, Oh, how, if you don't mind me asking, how many years have you been teaching? I said, well, this is my first year down in Florida. It's my first full-time teaching position in public school. And she said, oh my goodness, honey, I'm paying for your stuff. And I said, oh my gosh, oh, please. And then she saw, my wallet had fallen and my cards went everywhere. And she saw my college ID fall out and I still had it. And she goes, oh my gosh. So I went to Wagner College in Staten Island. That's another borough of New York City. And she said, oh my gosh, I went to Wagner College. I said, yeah. And so it was, and she grew up, and apparently she grew up in the same neighborhood as me, only a few streets over. I mean, many, 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 many years ago. And she had just retired from teaching, and she paid for all of my things. So just meeting people wherever you are. I mean, there's so many transplants down here, so many people from the Northeast. And it does still feel like home when I hear people talking about the North and how everyone wants to get out and move somewhere, like the beach and everything. I mean, but I thank God every day that I had the childhood I had and came from a big family, and everyone is still there. All the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, the friends, everyone is still there.
Oh, that's neat. Tell me about your family.
Parents.
So how many siblings did your parents have in the US? And, how many people were there in Brooklyn that were your family?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I have two younger siblings. My brother, Peter, he's living in DC right now. And then my sister, Barbara, she just got married last year. And, so she's got, so she lives with my wonderful brother-in-law, Vincenzo. And they live in New York too. My brother's in DC. I'm in Florida. And we were always around everyone. My dad's parents, because my parents worked, every day. My dad's parents stayed with us every single day. So we were with Yaya and Papu every day. And the older I got, the more I admired them and respected them for the fact that both of them had chronic arthritis, and they never learned how to drive a car. They didn't have to, because they lived right by the buses and the subways, and they walked everywhere in Brooklyn. They got on the bus every single day in the morning to help us get ready for school, make us breakfast, drop us off, pick us up. And because they didn't drive a car, I mean, it was really hard for them to take us places where we needed to have a car. So my parents had to get a babysitter who watched us when we were little too. And she helped, driving the car, taking us to play dates, dance practice, all these activities. And then, so we were with Yaya and Papu and my dad's parents every day. And then on the weekends, especially on Sundays in the summer, we went to my mom's family's house, where they had a big backyard and a big pool, and my cousins were there, and we would have family barbecues every Sunday, and sometimes on Saturdays, but mostly Sundays during the summer. And I just remember all of the uncles grilling like ribs and hot dogs, hamburgers, corn on the cob, all these wonderful foods. And my cousins were all playing in the pool together, and they liked to throw me in the pool. I didn't quite like that either, but it was really, but I look back and it was really fun. And unfortunately, 3 out of 4 of my grandparents have since passed on, but I'm grateful that I got to spend most of my life with them. I mean, the 3 of them have died when I was in my 20s, and my one Papu Costa is still living. He's 92 and he's doing great. So, and I'm happy he got to meet my son. Yeah, thank God. But growing up, we were all around family all the time. The cousins, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents, the kumbari, Nuna, we saw them all the time, and it was just.
That's beautiful.
That is so the memories are all coming back. Coming back.
I can't even imagine, how joyful that. I'm sure there are annoying aspects to it. There always are, right? To any community. But
I think
how joyful to have such a crowd. Yeah, there's always, I don't know. I've known really big families, and sometimes it's like everybody's up in my business and everybody's got an opinion. Yeah. But on the other hand, you have this huge support network. Now, what kind of a kid were you? Like, what were you interested in as a kid? What'd you like to do?
Wow. So I was very observant as a child. My mom says I didn't quite say a lot or talk a lot too much or smile a lot, because I was just very observant and just would be like, oh, what's this? What's that? But so she had us all in activities from when we were younger to kind of see what we liked, but also to learn not to be afraid of try something when we were older, like skiing, ice skating, swimming. I loved dance, loved dance. I loved theater. I loved drama. I loved the performing arts. That was really what I loved as a child. I danced for 15 years, and most of that was competitive. So my mom would drive me, and sometimes my dad too, competitions around the area. And that included Greek dance too. My siblings and we all did Greek dance. And I went to theater camp. I was in the drama club at school. I can't sing for the life of me, so I don't know why. I don't know how I made chorus, but I can't sing for the life of me. I don't know.
Well, you know what? Chorus, neither can I, and I did too. I think when you love theater, if it's a big enough group and you kind of fake it along there, it sort of works out. As long as nobody asks you to do a solo, you're okay.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. Well, that is so cool. So as you were doing theater and singing and all that, were you envisioning that was going to be your life? Like, were you going to be in theater forever?
So I wanted to be a choreographer, actually, or like a dance. I wanted to be like a choreographer or a dance therapist or an actress on Broadway in my wildest dreams.
Wait. What's a dance therapist?
So a dance therapist helps people who are having trouble, and they like if they're going through a depression, or it's kind of like sitting down therapy, but you express how you're feeling through dance and music. So they incorporate movement and music into your therapy, and I thought it was really cool.
Oh, that's very cool. That's really neat.
Yeah, it was really unique. I know someone who does it, and she incorporates the arts into her practice. So music, dance, visual arts. So painting, that's the other thing. I loved painting. I was never good at it, but I really loved painting. But so that was something I wanted to do, and then I thought I was going to be in something with theater. But then as I grew older and I explored more that there was out there, I realized I really loved working with children. So I said, okay, I'm going to be a dance teacher.
Perfect.
Perfect, right? And I said, okay, then I got really into I really liked science. I liked science, but again, I was never so amazing at it, but I really liked learning how things worked together. I said, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a dermatologist. I want to go to NYU, and I want to live in an apartment in Manhattan. That was my plan.
Very specific. This is a very specific plan.
Yes. And I actually, a part of my elementary school years was actually going to school in Manhattan on the little yellow school bus from Brooklyn. And that was really cool. My parents actually called me the Uptown Girl. So from, Billy Joel. Yeah.
Yep.
Billy Joel, Uptown Girl. Yeah. So,
Yep.
but my dad and I have a kind of a special bond with that, because he was the one who had to wake me up every morning, really early in the morning, and put me on the bus and cook me breakfast and made sure that the bus was on time every single day. And if he wasn't happy, he would call the school and say, excuse me, the bus was late today, and please don't mark my kid absent or late. But that was something I just wanted to plug in there about Manhattan, because I went to part of my elementary school years was going to school in Manhattan, and I really love being in the city. And so does my husband Andrew. Actually, I get to kind of go in the city with him when we do get to visit. Sometimes we like to kind of take the subway or the bus all the way uptown, like on Fifth Avenue, and just walk down Fifth Avenue and just look at everything. That's like our favorite thing to do. Yeah.
Yes. I had hardly ever been to New York until one of my kids goes to NYU now, and her dorm was at 35 Fifth Avenue. And it was my
goodness.
It's the most wonderful place in the world. It's so beautiful and amazing. And of course, she'll never be able to have an address like that again in her life. But
never.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin lived next door. It was all very fancy.
Oh, wow.
So how did you end up going to school in Manhattan? Is that like a normal thing that happens from Brooklyn, or was it some kind of a specialty school?
I'm very open about about this, by the way. So I
Uh-oh.
grew up, so kids kind of go where they want, pretty much. Many of the kids go to their zone schools in the neighborhood. I did for a few years, but there was something that was not quite clicking in my neighborhood school with me. I had a really hard time processing a lot of information, and the class sizes were quite large for me personally. For me, the teacher would give us this, they would be doing exams, the exams where they give you a booklet and you can't ask for help. You can't have them repeat the information. And it was literally just do the best you can while bubbling in on the Scantron sheets with the bubbles. And I lost the teacher after she said, write your name. And she said a bunch of pieces of information. I lost her. And I remember this vividly. And so I just sat on my hands and kind of looked around the classroom, and she said, Caroline, you're not done yet. Everyone else is done. I said, well, you didn't tell me to work. I didn't understand. And she said, well, why didn't you ask for help? And I said, well, you told me not to.
Right.
You said I can't raise my hand. So obviously my parents were called. Your child wasn't listening today. My parents didn't know. They didn't know what to do. They were just like, oh my goodness, okay, something's not right. We have to go to a child psychologist. So I just remember sitting and being pulled out of school a lot. And I didn't like that. I didn't like being away from my friends. I didn't like missing school. I didn't like missing out on anything. I really didn't. I liked being around my friends. And it came to the conclusion that I had a form of a learning disability called auditory processing. I have a form of auditory processing disorder. So and I have a really hard time doing math still, actually. I still use my fingers to count. I still use, coins to count everything. Like I said, I'm really open about it. So I just, please, it doesn't,
well, I'm glad you are.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you are, because I think so. And especially, like you're saying, how often do kids get called discipline problems? Because somehow the way that we're this one size fits all instruction that they've received doesn't work with that. I have a daughter with ADHD, and it was totally the same story. It was always like, why is she so uncooperative? And she was upset too. She's like, I don't know why I'm uncooperative. I can't do these things. They're not saying it in a way that makes any sense to me.
Absolutely.
It's hard.
Absolutely. And when you're so young, you don't quite know why you're doing things like that. I mean, you can't explain them, but then my parents found this school in Manhattan. It was called the Gateway School of New York. And they had a building all the way on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And that was the best place for me because the classes were small. Many kids in the school, if not all the kids, had some sort of the same thing I had, the learning differences. I like to call them learning differences. Yeah. And they all had IEPs. They were all being pulled out of the room all day for speech therapy, occupational therapy, extra tutoring. And it was kids like me that could succeed. And I just remember getting on the school bus every day with the other Brooklyn kids. There were other kids from Brooklyn going to Manhattan. And I made some of the most amazing friends there. And with some of them, we are still friends to this day. And it's 20 years later and we're still friends.
That is so amazing. It's so wonderful. It's wonderful too that you were able, you had sort of the resource, right? Because you're in a big city, you're able to find a school that has teachers who know how to teach you. And, I'm sure somebody in the same situation in a small town somewhere maybe can't find it, and it's a shame, because what a wonderful thing to have not just one good teacher, but really a whole school full of support. That's amazing.
My teachers were amazing. They made me want to become a teacher. Like they made me, thinking back, they made me want to become a teacher and work with children. And through this all, even through high school, middle school, after I left for middle school and high school and college, I had to learn how to advocate for myself. So I had to learn how to not just, I have to learn how to take notes, but I had to actually go to little seminars, little workshops and little tutoring sessions on how to take notes, how to do math not the right way, excuse me, just how to do math in a way that's going to work for me, and how to and use a planner, learn how to process information. And it just kind of came as something I had to do and natural. And now I'm a special education teacher. And
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, and it's true. I mean, a lot of people just take for granted the idea that everyone's brain works the same way. And it really doesn't. And it's not even an intelligence thing, right? Like a lot of times people with very high intelligence have a ton of differences in how they take in or process information. And we just, it's so good that education is starting to see that now. I feel like, 75 years ago, it was just like, well, that kid should be a shepherd because this doesn't work for him. But how did this impact your self-esteem? I'm curious, especially at the beginning when you're constantly getting pulled out and it's almost treated like a discipline thing.
Yes.
What did that do to you?
So in the beginning, when we didn't quite know what was going on, I did not like being away from my friends. As I said before, I did not like being away from the class. They were going to music class. I loved music class, but I had to go see the guidance counselor to quote, play games, which really was, the intelligence tests. I had to go and speech therapy. When I was younger, at first I did not like it. But then when it really impacted me because I was the only one at that time at my first school that I was getting pulled out. So it was really like everyone could see, like, ooh, if you get pulled out, you did something wrong. And it was really like, I remember just feeling like why, like I had, I was little, so why me, It was like a why me moment. And I remember going home to my parents and I was like, Mommy, Daddy, I don't like going away from my class. I don't like missing music. I don't like missing, art. I want to go to recess, but I can't, because I have to go to speech. I don't like, I didn't like anything. And I had a lot of why me moments. And then when I really understood how I was different, it wasn't until I was a little older that I was really able to understand that, everyone's brain works differently and everyone has strengths and weaknesses. That's when I really began to be like, okay, I need to be more open about this. My parents, as parents, were learned to be very open about it. And even though my learning differences are much, much more mild than, say, someone who has a child with autism, or a child who has a couple developmental delays. They need much more support than I do, but my parents learned how to be very open about it and advocating speaking to other families who are going through the same thing. Yeah. So I really learned we were a team. I feel my parents and I, we were a team with how to approach these things. And even to this day, if I have large amounts of information, I've learned to just stop, take a breath, think, and say, okay, I heard you on this part. I need you to repeat this part, or I don't quite follow you. Can you repeat that again? So learning how to not be ashamed to ask questions or to say, can you clarify that for me, please?
Oh, well, see, I mean, it's so wonderful to have that kind of support. And it's wonderful for you. And it's also wonderful for the other families who benefit from your parents' openness, right? And the more that happens, and I think over the years it's gotten better, the more we're doing that, all of our kids benefit. It's just amazing. Well,
absolutely.
We're going to take a short break and we will be right back. We're going to have a little message from Ancient Faith Radio. And I just want to remind you, if you would like to join the conversation, you're welcome to call us at 1-855-AF-RADIO, 1-855-237-2346. We'll be right back with Presbytera Caroline Pavlakos.
Everyday Orthodox with Elissa Bielitich will be back in a moment. Give Elissa and her guest a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
No end of books these days offer us techniques for self-improvement. But in the newest release from the Ancient Faith store, Gratitude in Life's Trenches, Robin Phillips takes a different tack. He shows us that God meets us where we are, in the pain and heartache of the present moment. Instead of looking for a way to escape from hardship, we can cultivate an attitude of gratitude, peace, and self-acceptance that will transform our experience of suffering. Drawing on his own experiences and his work as a consultant in the behavioral health industry, as well as stories of saints and sufferers, teachings of the fathers, and recent discoveries in neuroscience, Phillips shows us that the journey to personal well-being is one we can all travel, regardless of the hardships we may face. To find this book and others like it, you can go to store.ancientfaith.com. Again, that is store.ancientfaith.com.
We're back with Everyday Orthodox with Elissa Bieletich. Do you have a question for Elissa and today's guest? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Elissa.
Welcome back to Everyday Orthodox. It's wonderful to have you here. And of course, tonight we're talking with Presbytera Caroline Pavlakos. And we actually have a call. We have a call. Mike from Texas is calling. Mike, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Welcome, Mike. Where are you in Texas?
I'm in Fort Worth.
Oh, I know who that. Oh, I know you. Excellent. Welcome. And do you have a question for Presbytera?
I do, Presbytera. I called the conversation and moved on. I thank you for your sensitivity about autism and things like that. We certainly have that in our family, and it takes a lot of wisdom and to handle that wisely. So anyway, but I wanted to just mention, I was listening to your beautiful anecdotes concerning how you grew up with your yayas and papus and aunts and uncles and cousins, and
Yes.
So much of the faith is just woven within the Greek culture, the Greek family, the Greek communities for over centuries. And it's been really a blessing when it came to the United States for those of us who didn't grow up Greek. We kind of get to vicariously experience some of that. But I've seen several parishes struggle with, it's hard to keep that going generation after generation. And sometimes it seems to be strained to try to get them to recreate what they had as children. And it's not easy to have that just happen, And I think whether you're in the United States or any other country, it gets hard after 2 or 3 generations. And so I was just wondering, as a presbytera, is this something that you've dealt with? And then the Greek Church, one other side of this is the Greek Church is suffering from its own success, where they've preached Christ, and so they're getting all these converts that lack that shared experience. And so, what are your reflections on what that means for the church as it continues to grow in the United States, and how are you trying to do whatever you feel you need to do in that respect? I'll hush.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. Thanks for thanks, Mike. Wow, that's a really great question. Well, first of all, thank you for telling me how much you appreciate me talking about with having a learning difference and sensitivities and everything. I'm very open about it, and it's important to be open about it. So I thank you for your support. I think so. As a presbytera, just having not grown, so we don't have immediate family in the area, Father and I, and that has made it that was a big transition for me, moving away from my family where we grew up with everyone together. And then Father Andrew, my husband, he lived in, he's a PK. His dad is a priest, and he grew up in, Father Andrew was grown up in 6 different states. And, they also didn't have family close by. They really didn't have family close by. So the church, when Father Andrew and I were in Richmond first and then moved down to Florida, the church became our family. We made friends with people. A lot of people took us in as our own. A lot of the older people became like our yaya and papu, and our yayas and papus. And actually, the nice thing is that when we first moved down to Florida, Father Andrew's yaya and papu were living close to us, so it was nice to have yaya and papu close by. Unfortunately, they've since passed. But I feel that I'm trying to think. That was a really awesome, that was a really great question. If I'm kind of steering away from the answer from the answer that you want, just please feel free to stop me and just say no, that's not what I meant. But I just
No, you're fine.
okay, thank you. I So, like I said, as a presbitera, many presbiteras and clergy families are moved away from their family, or maybe they live, maybe they're blessed to live a few minutes away from family. Maybe they're blessed to live a couple hours. Father Andrew and I, we live in different states from our family, and going to, being involved in the church was trying to get involved in the church as a presbitera was a little overwhelming at first, because I thought, okay, what do I do? Do I have to do everything? At first, when we didn't have children yet, we just had our son Costa last year, but I always believe, I decided, I said, okay, I'm going to try to get involved in at least one thing, and I'm going to do it well. And that led to our first parish, which was Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church in Clearwater, Florida. That was where Father Andrew first became a priest. And he was the assistant. I decided that I was going to get involved in Sunday school and teach Sunday school, and then get involved, kind of go when I wanted to volunteer with Goya. And just being around the kids and the young families with their kids, and then making friends with the young adults, really helped make the adjustment of living away from home a lot easier. But also in Richmond, Virginia, where we started, where Father Andrew was a youth director, I got involved in a dance group, and Father Andrew was the youth director. So we whenever someone was having, whenever someone was having a party and they said, "Hey, would you like to come?" We always said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And then we grew to be close with people from church, and there was a fair amount of converts at the cathedral in Richmond as well, and they had adapted so much to the Greek culture and the Orthodox faith that at one point I couldn't tell who was Greek and who wasn't Greek. I couldn't tell, and it was really beautiful.
I think you're hitting on. See, I guess as you were sharing, I think what it was just occurred in my mind was the idea that, in a sense, part of the catechism of a Greek family is growing up in a Greek family, as
Absolutely.
opposed to catechism class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for those who are converting, who did not grow up in the Greek family, it's almost like they didn't get that aspect, that catechetical aspect of being formed in the church. And I was just wondering how you compensate for that, or how you help those who didn't get to share that experience. And I think you just said that some of them have sort of adopted the whole thing, and you couldn't tell the difference between whoever was originally cradle Greek and who's just joined the church in that case. I've seen a lot of other places where they've struggled more, and so I'm just wondering what kind of grace could help since they didn't get to grow up with that, I just didn't know how you
I would definitely say connect with your priest first and foremost. Talk to your priest about how you can get involved and connect with the community in that way. And then that's a really great point to I feel the priest can definitely guide you to ways on how to get involved that I think fit each person's need. Like if it's a young person or a young family, the priest can connect them with other young families. If it's an older person, the priest can connect them with older people, or if there's an organization at the church that they think that they would be really a good part in, like if it's a cooking ministry, or if it's trying to think or if it's or Pavlakos, or Bible study. I would say, or something that happened to me was my first weekend in Richmond, where I knew nobody. It was our first weekend that we had actually moved down there, my first weekend. And it was the weekend of the huge Greek festival. And I didn't know anyone. And I was basically thrown in the lemonade stand at the Greek festival to meet people. And it was really fun. And I would say also Greek festivals are a great way to get involved with how to help. And you'll definitely be a part of the culture and the community then, with everyone there and the people and the music. And I just think I think connecting with your priest is first and foremost is really important for a good spearhead to if someone that's not of the faith comes into the church.
Well, and I think, Presbytera, I like what you're saying there about getting them to work, right? Like if you can get people kind of working, like put them in the kitchen, get them working, like not only do you meet people, but you get some ownership out of that. Absolutely. But it's such a complicated question too, because I've also known Americans who've come into the church, Americans, right? Like as if the Greeks aren't also American. We always talk that way, right? But like to say like generic people off the street who come into the church and who are not Greek. And then a lot of times, at first there's a little bit of overwhelm, and people, especially at the Greek festival, we had ours last month, you see a lot of people going, oh, you're an honorary Greek. And it's like, well, I'm not an honorary, like I'm actually Irish, and I have a whole Irish family, and they're pretty great too. So it is this balance, right? That like you have to grow in love together. And over time, I think most of us do eventually really enjoy the Greek customs, and we become a part of it. But it's funny because you can also overdo it too fast,
Yeah. Like, and I think too, I know it's been said on the show a bunch from people, the big T and little T traditions, like the big, T traditions are what we have of our, what does our faith say? What does our church say? What does our cult, and then then the little T traditions are the traditions that, we have, of that each church has, like for their community, or each culture has, like for what part of Greece they're from. Like we live 10 minutes away from Tarpon Springs. So we've learned so many traditions that people have there, from traditions of the cathedral there and people from the islands. And then our church, we serve the community of St. George in Newport Richey. It's about 30 minutes away from where we live in Palm Harbor. And there are traditions at that church that I've never seen before. I mean, and it's beautiful. I definitely think getting exposure and asking about the big T, little T traditions.
One thing that's connecting, as I'm hearing y'all talk, is that when you hear these monastic traditions, a lot of people go there wanting to get deep into immersive into religious life, and the first thing their spiritual fathers do is put them to work in their garden or in the kitchen, and there's just a whole lot of labor in the healing of their soul, and it seems like whether you're a Russian or a Serbian or a Greek, going ahead and embracing whatever community you found yourself in immersively until you can grow and begin to appropriate whatever grace God's going to give you in that, is instead of trying to fight and say, no, I'm just going to get the religious part and leave the rest. I think it just creates stress or tension that is non-productive. And I think it's better just to pick up, go work at the festival, go all in, do your Slavas with the Serbs, and just become whatever community God's put you in. I think us us folks who didn't come from an Orthodox background need to immerse ourselves in that community and make it our family, the way you beautifully described.
I agree with you, Mike. I remember, and I don't know how long you have been in the church. I think it's longer than I have, but we both, my guess is that when you came in, you probably, like me and so many others, you come in thinking that it is two separate things, right? Like, well, I want the faith. I don't want the culture part. And it's as you sort of mellow out over the years and you see things. One of the things I like is my priest will call little T traditions, like, the tradition of like, this is how you make the bread on St. Basil's Day. And if you're not doing it, you're not doing it right. And it's like, okay, that's a little tradition. It's very beautiful, but it's also something that might be different in the next town or the next family even. Right. But, my priest calls them pious practices. And I love that phrase, because what it really shows you is that, like, there's a way that our faith can inhabit our actions.
Yeah.
And when, like Mike called it sort of a catechesis for people who are growing up in a Greek home or a Serbian home, a Russian home or Syrian. And it's true, you have all of these practices that embody and support the faith, and they're really beautiful, and they are optional, and that's okay. But the more you embrace them, to within reason, to the point where you're not stressing out your family or anything. But the more you embrace them, it just gets better. I really think so. Mike, thank you so much for calling with this question. I think it's excellent.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. It's good talking to you. Please send my love to the family. Mike is one of my favorite people in the whole world. He was actually on this show. He was one of our first guests on Everyday Orthodox, and he is just one of my favorite people. But I do think that that's true. Do you feel like you grew? I think it's so interesting that you're saying that in the church where you are now, in that parish, the practices are different, right? That's true, isn't it? Across Greece, people just have all different, in this village it's one thing, and in that village it's another.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know what, Elissa, I was going to say too, I was trying to find the time where I can kind of talk about it a little bit is I didn't growing up because, we went to Greek school, we did Greek dance. Everything was Greek. Although my papu did raise us to be very proud Americans. He's a Korean War vet. And my brother works in DC now. So, we love our country, growing up, I didn't understand that there were other jurisdictions of Orthodoxy, and I didn't understand. And it wasn't until, the first kind of exposure I had was I went to Ionian Village, and in 2005, and I was, we were exposed to, we went on all of these wonderful trips. I mean, I know anyone who's gone to Ionian Village has an amazing time. I remember
and I just want to say to our
yeah.
audience, if you guys don't know Ionian Village, it's a couple of weeks long. It's a summer camp, and you can send your kids, and they go to Greece, and they actually stay together in Greece, but it's English language. And, even there, right, it's a lot of Greek American kids, but it's also kids who are Romanian American and Serbian American. It's neat, but what an experience. But I would have thought that would be like totally Greece immersive. How was that an introduction to something else?
So it was very Greek immersive, but the director at the time was also, on one of the last nights, they were talking about a program called Crossroad, and up in Boston. And there was a very nice young gentleman who was standing up there with a couple of his other friends in the oldest boy's cabin, and his name was Andrew.
Oh.
And I sat next. And then this Andrew found me on the plane going back home. It's my husband, Andrew.
Yeah.
Found me on the plane. Yeah, my husband, Andrew. Found me on the plane going back home to America, and sat next to me, and I started talking to him, and he thought, he told me to this day, he in his head, he thought, oh, great, this kid won't stop talking. What have I done? What have I gotten into? But we were friends. We were friends for a while. But going back to Crossroad, Andrew had gone to Crossroad before he went to Ionian Village with a couple of our other friends that we're still friends with to this day, actually. And I ended up going to Crossroad in 2008. It was the first year they had 2 sessions. So that was really when I got exposure to all the other Orthodox jurisdictions, and I loved it. And still friends with some of the participants that I met. It's wonderful, but I really grew to understand and really love how I was raised to be an Orthodox Christian. Like, I knew we chanted in church, but I didn't know why. I knew we had Holy Unction in church and why we venerate icons, but I didn't know why. And the one thing I really loved is I really loved taking the classes with, Hellenic College Holy Cross professors about the church history. We had Dr. James Skedros as our professor, and then of blessed memory, Father Thomas Hopko. of blessed memory, was our teacher for all of our faith classes, all about the
what
church.
What an opportunity!
It was wonderful, and I
hear that a lot,
yeah.
though. People who grow up especially in an ethnic Orthodox family, often they don't realize there are other kinds of Orthodox, which is also kind of funny too, right? Because it's like, the churches are probably right near each other.
Yeah.
You didn't know it.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
crazy.
it's funny you say that too, because right down the street from Holy Cross, where I grew up, we have St. Mary's Antiochian Church, and it's right down the street. And then in downtown Brooklyn, where Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Cathedral is, right down that street is the Antiochian Cathedral. And there's there's so many churches, and in Brooklyn growing up, we church hopped a lot. So we have friends all over the place in Brooklyn. I mean, if someone was having a church dance, we went. If someone was having if one church didn't have a joy, for joy or Goya, but this other church had, we went. If one church didn't have scouts, we went. So that's how we made our friends. And my mom grew up at one parish, my dad grew up at another parish, but then when they had children, they decided that we were going to plant roots at our current parish at Holy Cross. Well,
so then you end up having people at all of them then. All of them. Beloved.
And all of them. And then when Andrew went to seminary, I mean, we have so many friends that are clergy and kumbari, and it's beautiful.
It is. And it's wonderful how the church really is a big family. And I mean, sometimes really literally, right? Like sometimes they're your cousins and your kumbari and your, in that sense. But also the church does become a huge family. And I converted when I was pregnant with my first, and I remember just thinking wow, she's going to belong here. Yeah. Like she can go to any Orthodox church and all of them are family. And I think that is so true and so beautiful. Yeah. But I also think your experience is not unusual, where you go off to college and it's either OCF or Crossroads, right? Where the kids go and they sit down and they're like, wait a minute, you're Antiochian Orthodox and, you're Carpatho-Russian. What's that? And it's like this beautiful realization that the faith is so big and so wonderful.
It is. It really is. It really is. And I think and then like also now as a new mom, I love my son so much. I love my son so much. I love how now as a mom, I get to really show him things that I've learned, and experiencing Holy Week with him this year was absolutely beautiful with my son Costa, and watching and we were I know in a little in the beginning before the show, we were talking about last year during the pandemic, I was 7 months pregnant with Costa. We didn't know if Costa was a boy or a girl, so we wanted to be surprised, and it was so much fun. And it was so much fun not knowing. And I was teaching from home on my computer, teaching pre-K. So I'm a pre-K teacher. Teaching pre-K from home during the pandemic on the laptop was so hard, but I was very grateful for the fact that I got to be home for my whole last trimester of my pregnancy. But also we needed the church so much more than we ever had before. And I know Andrew was saying this year for Pascha, for the community, he was saying it was like his first year all over again, because last year the church was empty.
Yeah.
The church was empty. Right. And I know that like as a teacher, I had worked harder than I ever had before. I missed my kids. I missed being in the classroom with them. I missed reading to them. I missed singing songs, but I'm very blessed with the fact that I got to be home and learn and be a mommy to Costa. And he's running around everywhere now. He's 13 months and he is so smiley, and I love watching the world through his eyes, and I love how he is in church. He's really cute in church, and everyone loves to look at him. But we sit up in the balcony, and I love sitting up in the balcony so we can see everything. And today when Andrew came out of the altar and was standing on the solea, you just hear from the balcony just a and everyone's like, what's that? I'm like, it's Costa. Hi, Dad. Like
saying hi, Dad.
Say hi, Daddy. So it's been really great. I love being a mom, a new mom. I've turned up on a year so much more than I've ever had, and it's one day at a time with the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely. It is, like so many important jobs. I think like being a priest, like being a presbytera, a teacher, certainly being a parent, it's hard. And there's so much challenge, but it's totally worth it. And it's so beautiful. And as long as you're prayerful and you've got God by your side, you're okay. It's wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
that's great.
Absolutely.
So how did you and Father Andrew, we just have a few minutes, but I have to know, how did you go from the annoying kid on the plane to the woman he wanted to marry? What happened?
So we did. So Father Andrew and I, we were friends for a while. It was a lot of, back then we had AOL Instant Messenger. If anyone remembers that, with the dial-up service, and you couldn't be on the phone. Yeah, we couldn't be on the phone. I had to use the internet. So we connected there, and then, we would talk on the phone, and that was a year later from Ionian Village. He was going to seminary, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. We can be friends. Yeah, sure. He was in college. So he went to Hellenic College and, first, and there was just one time where we decided, all right, fine, we'll go on a date with each other. So we went, he took the bus down to Brooklyn and came to my house. He met my family. And we went out to dinner and we saw a movie. And then he knew he wanted to come back, and the rest is history. We've been together ever since. It was 2007. Yeah, 2007 we started dating, and we've been together ever since. And
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and we really had to have a lot of serious conversations as we began to get more serious in our relationship about the possibility of me becoming a presbytera, because Andrew wanted to go to seminary.
Yeah.
And
it's
it just took
job.
It's a big job. It would be a big adjustment. The friends that he made became my friends, kumbari with some of them. And I began to meet their girlfriends, who became their fiancés, who became their wives, and we all connected. And it was something that I said, okay, well, I love you so much, and if this works out, I'm going to follow you.
There you go.
So,
and you became a part of a community. And
we did.
Oh, that's lovely. That is lovely. Presbytera, it is such a delight to talk to you. I have so enjoyed this. My goodness.
Too.
Well, excellent. And see, you didn't go on any crazy tangents. You were so concerned, and it didn't happen. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on Everyday Orthodox. That was a joy.
Thank you so much for having me, Elissa. It's been awesome.
Well, and thank you to our audience for joining us again, and come back next Sunday night to meet another Everyday Orthodox person. We'll see you then. And now it's time for Father Evan, live on Ancient Faith Radio. Father, how are you?
Hi, Elissa. Good to hear your voice.
Oh, it's good to hear yours, Father. We haven't been able to run up against each other lately. You've been out of town, or I've been out of town. I hope everything is going well with you.
Yeah, how's your summer?
Thank God. It's pretty good. Busy, but very good. Were you able to go to camp this year? Was there an actual in-person event?
There was an in-person camp, but I have an assistant, Father Gabriel, and so he was at camp while I was back at the parish. So I didn't get to go this year. He did.
It's too bad. Yeah, I didn't get to go either.
Maybe.
Next year. Hopefully we'll both be there next year, and I'll see you then.
Right? Yeah,
have a great show tonight,
Thanks,
Father.
Elissa.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
To the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit.
This is Orthodoxy Live with Father Evan Armitage, a live interactive call-in program where your questions about the Orthodox faith are addressed. Father Evan is the priest at St. Spiridon Greek Orthodox Church in Loveland, Colorado. Call in your question at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Here now is Father Evan.
Well, good evening and welcome to Orthodoxy Live. I'm your host, Father Evan.